Behold, the citizens of this new empire, vast, luminous, and utterly obsessed with the moving image. I, Gaius Julius Caesar, conqueror of Gaul, reformer of Rome, and occasional wearer of laurel wreaths, have emerged from the sands of eternity to witness your latest spectacle, Deadpool and Wolverine. You call it cinema. I call it the modern Colosseum, but with fewer lions and significantly more product placement. When first I was told of this movie theater, I imagined a grand amphitheater, perhaps adorned with marble columns, senators reclining with goblets of wine. Nay, instead, I entered a dark cavern that smells of buttered corn and anxiety. The people sat shoulder to shoulder, not as proud citizens of Rome, but as supplicants before a glowing altar. And what an altar it was! Vast and radiant, displaying scenes of chaos and masked men who speak faster than a senator denying bribery charges. Before the main attraction, the oracles of commerce presented trailers, moving murals designed to sell yet more spectacles. One displayed an army of singing trolls, another, a car that can fly, and then there were the most curious, a man in a red suit who cannot perish, partnered with a brooding barbarian with claws of steel. I took this as an omen. Surely the gods wished to test my understanding of this new age. So I sat, or rather, reclined with imperial dignity in seat G7 and attempted to engage with your popcorn. A strange creation. Puffed grain seasoned with salt and regret. It stuck to my toga, defied my attempts at consumption, and squeaked underfoot like the mice of the Senate. Then came the 3D glasses. Ah yes, the cursed lenses. The attendant insisted I wear them for the full experience. Fool that I was, I obeyed. Imagine my horror when the screen erupted into 3 dimensions. Men flying toward me, claws extending, bullets dancing through the air. I drew my gladius in self-defense, causing quite the stir among the commoners. The woman beside me whispered, "Is this performance art?" It was not. But I persisted, for a leader must never retreat before the unknown. As I gazed upon the opening battle, explosions, blood, laughter, I was reminded of my own arenas. But where my gladiators fought for honor and the glory of Rome, these warriors fought for banter, for irony, for meta jests that I could scarce comprehend. At one point, Deadpool turned to the audience and spoke directly to us, breaking the fourth wall, I believe you call it. In Rome, we called that madness. The last man who addressed invisible spectators was executed for treason and possession of cursed mushrooms. And yet, I found myself entertained. Against all logic, this crimson fool's antics possessed the same spirit as the jesters of my court, only louder, bloodier, and more self-aware. His companion, the gruff man with blades for fingers, reminded me of a centurion I once knew, loyal, angry, and perpetually in need of a bath. I confess there was a moment, brief, fleeting, when I forgot who I was. The crowd cheered, I laughed aloud, and for the first time in 2 millennia, I felt something strange, the thrill of shared absurdity. It was not the roar of the forum, but it was close. As the film thundered toward its end, I found myself asking, is this how the people of this age find meaning? Not through empire or conquest, but through stories of flawed immortals and talking mercenaries? Perhaps, I mused, this was their way of confronting the gods, not through prayer, but through popcorn. When the lights dimmed and the credits rolled, the crowd erupted in applause. Applause. For shadows on a wall. I felt Plato weeping in his grave. Yet there was something admirable in it, a shared joy, a communal roar not unlike the cheering of the forum. As I exited, a man stopped me. Hey, nice cosplay, dude. I did not understand his tongue, but I sensed it was a form of tribute. I raised my hand in acknowledgement, thumb extended upward, and he gasped in delight. Rome, it seems, still commands respect. Thus began my mission. If this Deadpool and Wolverine represents the new face of the Empire's entertainment, then it is my sacred duty to judge it, to weigh it, not with stars or tomatoes, but with the gravity of Roman decree. For if I am to live among the citizens of this modern empire, I must learn their heroes, their myths, their jesters, and their fools. I must gaze into their glowing arenas and ask, what does this say of their soul? So lend me your ears, modern citizens, for I shall dissect this film as I once dissected Gaul. Mercilessly, magnificently, and with just enough humility to seem relatable. Let the review commence. It is often said that Rome was not built in a day. True. But it could certainly be destroyed by one audience armed with popcorn, glowing rectangles, and a profound inability to remain silent for more than 12 seconds. The modern Colosseum. Once, my people gathered in the grand arenas of stone, where warriors clashed beneath the sun, lions roared, and emperors raised their thumbs to determine fate. Today, the people gather in these darkened chambers, temples of entertainment, to worship not Mars nor Jupiter, but a pantheon of masked jesters and muscular demigods. And the similarities, by the gods, they are uncanny. In the Colosseum, the crowd demanded blood. In the cinema, they demand sequels. Both chant for spectacle. Both revel in destruction. The only difference? In my day, the warriors actually died. Yet the rituals of this modern audience are most curious. Before the show begins, they perform a series of sacred gestures. They scan glowing talismans called QR codes. They exchange silver for tickets, flimsy papyrus that grants them access to the temple. And they purchase offerings of snacks for what is an epic without sustenance. I watched as the people balanced great buckets of popcorn, cups large enough to drown a gladiator, and confections that glowed with unnatural colors. I asked one attendant if the blue beverage was a potion. She said, "It's Mountain Dew. I suspect witchcraft." Then, as the lights dimmed, a voice declared, "Please silence your cell phones." The crowd obeyed instantly. Even in my Rome, I never saw such swift compliance. Not when I commanded legions. Truly, these phones must be sacred relics. But what fascinated me most was not the film itself. It was the people. They gasped in unison, laughed together, and shouted at the screen as if their cries could alter the fate of the heroes. This was no passive audience. This was a mob, joyful, volatile, alive. It reminded me of the day I first hosted games in the forum. The roar of the crowd, the shared heartbeat, the electric thrill of witnessing something together. The Romans called it communitas. The moderns call it fandom. But fandom, I soon discovered, is not mere admiration. It is devotion. A new religion, complete with its own gods, Stan Lee, prophets Ryan Reynolds, and holy texts, Twitter threads. I overheard two young men debating passionately in a lobby. Deadpool could totally beat Wolverine. No way, Logan heals faster. Bro, did you even read issue 24/5? I approached them, eager to join in discourse. "Gentlemen," I said, "perhaps both warriors should unite under one banner, as I once united Rome." They stared at me in silence. Then one muttered, "Nice LARP, dude." I do not know this LARP, but I sense it was not a compliment. Nevertheless, their fervor impressed me. In my day, such passion was reserved for the gods or the Republic. Now, it burns for men in spandex. The Empire has changed its idols, but not its hunger. As the film progressed, I began to see patterns familiar to any ruler. Deadpool, the jester, Wolverine, the soldier, the audience, the Senate, ever fickle, easily swayed by noise and novelty. It was, in truth, politics by other means. For every joke that landed, the crowd erupted in laughter. For every dull scene, a murmur of discontent rippled through the room like whispers in the Curia. The filmmakers, like cunning orators, shaped emotion with rhythm, building tension, delivering punchlines, earning applause. I thought of Cicero. Were he alive today, he would be writing screenplays. Still, I was not blind to the dangers of such spectacle. The people's gaze grows short, their patience weaker than a senator's promise. They crave constant stimulation, faster cuts, brighter colors, louder explosions. More, 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 they cry, until the art itself becomes a slave to the audience's appetite. Is this not how empires fall? Not through invasion, but through indulgence? Bread and circuses, my old friends, have evolved. Now they come in 4K resolution with surround sound. And yet, I cannot condemn them. For what is life without entertainment? Even I, the mighty Caesar, once staged elaborate performances to win the people's favor. The only difference is that my productions featured real tigers, not computer-generated ones. There was, however, one moment of transcendence. Midway through the film, as Deadpool cracked another jest and Wolverine rolled his weary eyes, I felt empathy. Two warriors burdened by immortality, cursed to fight forever in worlds not of their making. I, too, knew that pain. Perhaps all rulers do. I leaned back, sipped my overpriced goblet of Diet Cola, and thought, perhaps this is their tragedy, not the loss of empire, but the loss of meaning. Still, just as I began to drift into philosophical reflection, a bright light blinded me. The screen urged, "Please silence your phones." Once again, someone had broken the sacred rule. The crowd hissed. Retribution was swift. In the aisles, I saw a mob descend upon the offender with the fury of Spartacus. Truly, I have found my people. When the credits rolled, I lingered, watching the audience rise as one. They spoke of favorite moments, post-credit scenes, theories of universes colliding. The devotion was staggering, as if they had witnessed a battle between gods. And I realized the modern Colosseum does not feed on blood, but on connection. The gladiators may be digital, but the passion is as real as ever. This, I decree, is the power of modern spectacle. not merely to amuse, but to unite the masses in laughter, awe, and absurdity. And if Rome had had popcorn, perhaps she might have lasted a little longer. The Romans once said, "Give me a man of words, and I shall give you a man of power." Then I met Deadpool. At first glance, he appears to be a clown, a fool in crimson armor, a jester who wields swords instead of wit, or perhaps with wit as his blade. Yet the more I watched, the more I realized this mark with a mouth is not merely a fool. He is a philosopher in chaos. He speaks endlessly, to himself, to others, to us, the unseen audience. He shatters the walls of the story, mocks the gods of narrative, and exposes the machinery of the world he inhabits. In my time, men who questioned the boundaries of reality were called madmen. In this age, they are called franchise leads. As he danced through blood and bullets, I could not help but admire his fearlessness. There is a purity in his madness. When Deadpool kills, he smiles. When he dies, he jokes. When he resurrects, he comments on it. He is both the performer and the spectator, an Ouroboros of irony devouring its own tail. In Rome, we prized stoicism, the art of maintaining composure amid chaos. Deadpool, however, has perfected the opposite. He embraces the storm. He makes the absurd his empire. I took notes upon my scroll. Yes, I brought a scroll. One must document history properly. Observation I, Deadpool speaks faster than Cicero on election day. Observation 2, he bleeds more than my entire army at Pharsalus. Observation 3, he regenerates faster than the Senate's corruption. Such a man defies all logic. Even the gods, I suspect, would find him tiring. Yet beneath his jest lies a tragedy I recognize. A man broken by fate, stitched together by rage and humor. He laughs, not because the world is funny, but because the alternative is despair. Truly, this is the mark of every great fool, to hide truth within mockery. I found myself strangely moved when Deadpool lamented his suffering, and immediately followed it with a fart joke. Such emotional whiplash. It reminded me of the Senate floor. But let us speak plainly, Deadpool is what happens when the court jester steals the emperor's throne. He mocks power, mocks art, mocks himself. He slays villains while winking at the audience, and yet somehow, the audience adores him for it. I began to wonder, if Rome had known such a man, would our empire have endured longer, or crumbled faster? Would the people have chosen a comedian over a conqueror, a man of jokes over a man of justice? Perhaps they already did. In truth, Deadpool embodies everything that terrifies an emperor. He cannot be censored. He cannot be controlled. And worst of all, he does not care. He wields self-awareness like a gladius, slicing through hypocrisy, institutions, and even his own storylines. He mocks death itself, a feat even I never accomplished, though I certainly tried. There was a scene, brief but unforgettable. Deadpool pauses mid-battle to question the movie's budget. "Where's the CGI?" he cries. "Did we spend all the money on Wolverine?" The audience roared. I was confused. And yet, I realized, he is not breaking illusion. He is redefining it. He shows them the stage, yet they remain enthralled. He is the perfect performer, both aware and unaware of his divinity. I began to suspect that Deadpool might be Roman at heart. His humor is savage. His loyalty is conditional. His ego, enormous. His mortality, negotiable. In another life, I might have appointed him tribune of the people, though the assassination attempts would have been frequent and most likely mutual. But here lies the true genius of this character. Deadpool is a mirror, and every citizen sees in him what they wish. The philosopher sees nihilism. The fool sees comedy. The cynic sees chaos. The emperor sees a rival. And as I watched him decapitate a foe while humming a jaunty tune, I realized that he is not mocking art. He is art, the chaotic reflection of the modern soul, stitched together by irony and immortality. His power is not his healing, it is his irreverence. For while all others worship their stories, Deadpool dares to question them. He is the only man in the Colosseum who points at the emperor and says, "Nice sandals." I laughed aloud, loudly, embarrassingly. The man beside me glared. I told him, "This jester understands empire better than you, citizen." He moved 3 seats away. But laughter is truth unshackled, is it not? Deadpool's laughter rends the veil between fiction and life. It is a weapon sharper than any sword, and it leaves no wound but awareness. So I decree this. If my poets once sang of Aeneas and Achilles, the poets of this age shall sing of Deadpool, the unkillable clown, the philosopher in red, the patron saint of absurdity. In an age of solemn heroes and self-serious gods, he alone remembers that existence itself is ridiculous. And perhaps that is why the people love him. He reminds them that even immortality can be a joke. and that laughter, divine, deranged, defiant laughter, is the last true rebellion against the inevitable. When I first beheld the man called Wolverine, I believed I was looking upon a gladiator from my own time, a warrior carved from iron and stubbornness, haunted by 1,000 campaigns. He enters the screen not like a hero, but like a ghost that refuses to die. And for a moment, I forgot I was watching a film. I was watching a legend. There is something deeply Roman in this man. He does not fight for glory, nor coin, nor empire, but because he cannot do otherwise. Battle, for him, is not choice, it is identity. He bleeds, heals, and repeats. An eternal soldier in search of an honorable death that never comes. How I envy and pity him both. For while I was stabbed once and stayed dead, he must relive that agony eternally. Wolverine carries himself like a stoic philosopher. He endures pain and silence. He scorns sentiment. His only companions are rage and regret. Were he Roman, I would name him Lucius the Indestructible, veteran of 100 wars, hero of none. And yet, beneath that scowl, I saw a man longing for peace. Not the peace of victory, but the peace of release. The peace denied to warriors who outlive their purpose. When he gazes into the distance, I see every old general who has stared too long at the ashes of his own victories. He is Marcus Aurelius without the empire. A soldier-philosopher trapped in a world that has forgotten both virtue and valor. But the tragedy of Wolverine lies not merely in his pain, it lies in his memory. He remembers every face, every loss, every failure. The centuries weigh on him like armor he cannot remove. His wounds close, but his grief does not. At one point in the film, Deadpool mocks him, calling him broody, and the audience laughs. But I did not, for I know that kind of silence. It is the silence of men who have buried too many comrades to count. If Deadpool is chaos incarnate, Wolverine is order decaying. Two sides of the same coin, the fool who laughs at death, and the soldier who cannot escape it. When they fight, it is not just violence, it is philosophy in motion. Deadpool fights like the mob, wild, impulsive, fueled by laughter. Wolverine fights like a legionnaire, efficient, relentless, and grim. One destroys meaning, the other clings to it. I found their duel strangely beautiful. The eternal dance between absurdity and honor. And though Deadpool often triumphs with his tongue, I sense that even he bows, silently, to the man who refuses to yield. It is said that the gods curse men with immortality to test their sanity. If so, then Wolverine has long passed the trial. He exists not to live, but to endure. There was a scene where he sits, shirt torn, blood steaming on his skin, and mutters something about being tired of fighting. The theater laughed. But I, Caesar, felt it as prophecy, for when the warrior tires of war, civilization must listen. What struck me most was how the moderns adore such a man. In Rome, we celebrated victory, strength without hesitation. Here, they celebrate the broken hero, the flawed savior. It seems the age of empire has given way to the age of introspection. I cannot decide if this is progress or decay. Still, I admire the man. He reminds me that even in endless pain, there is dignity. He does not weep, he does not beg, he simply continues. The Romans called it virtus, courage through suffering. And though the moderns may not know the word, they feel it. Every time Wolverine growls, every time he claws through despair, the audience remembers what it means to endure. He is, in truth, a barbarian philosopher, brutal in action, profound in silence. A man who has seen too much to believe in gods, yet too proud to abandon humanity. At one point, Deadpool calls him an animal, and I nearly leapt from my seat. He is not beast, he is stoic. A wolf who learned restraint. A soldier who knows mercy but chooses rage. I once commanded legions who fought for years under the burning sun, their armor cracked, their sandals torn. And even they, fierce as they were, would have looked upon this man and said, he fights like Rome itself, wounded, weary, but unbroken. As I watched Wolverine drag himself across the battlefield, bleeding, regenerating, snarling through exhaustion, I whispered to myself, he is what remains when empire falls, and only the will to survive endures. That, perhaps, is why the people love him. Not because he wins, not because he conquers, but because he continues. The audience cheers when he slashes and growls, but beneath the spectacle, I sense something sacred. He is the embodiment of persistence, a reminder that heroism is not triumph, but refusal. And in that moment, I understood Deadpool may represent the laughter of the masses, but Wolverine is their soul, weary, scarred, and still fighting. If Deadpool is the fool who tells the truth through mockery, Wolverine is the martyr who tells it through pain. Together, they are Rome's reflection. One decadent, one disciplined, both doomed to repeat history in spandex. As the credits rolled, I raised my goblet of Diet Cola and toasted the screen. To you, Logan, the last of the stoic barbarians. May the gods grant you the one mercy denied to heroes, a peaceful end. Then, of course, Deadpool appeared again in the post-credits scene, ruining the sentiment entirely. Truly, the jester never knows when to leave the stage. Rome was built on conquest. Marvel was built on content. And I, Julius Caesar, tell you, there is no greater empire today than that which reigns over imagination. The banners no longer bear the eagle, they bear the logo of a mouse. The Senate is gone, replaced by shareholders. And yet, the legions still march, now armed not with swords, but with streaming subscriptions. It is astonishing. Everywhere I look, the symbols of this new empire shimmer: masks, merchandise, memes. Once, my citizens worshipped the gods. Now, they worship franchises. And I cannot decide if that is tragedy or genius. The Marvel Empire has done what no conqueror ever achieved, uniting the known world under one shared mythology. No borders, no languages, no nations, only characters. Deadpool, Wolverine, Iron Man, Thor, names spoken with reverence across continents. In this way, they have succeeded where I failed. I sought to rule men. They rule minds. When I walked through the lobby after the film, I saw their standards raised high. Posters, Funko idols, plastic armor. Citizens spoke not of politics, but of plot lines. They debated not laws, but timelines. It was as if the empire had been reborn, an empire of endless sequels. But I have learned, every empire carries within it the seed of its own destruction. I remember when the Republic rotted from indulgence. Too many feasts, too many games, too much faith and spectacle. The people no longer cared who ruled, only that the show continued. And as I stood beneath the glowing logo of Marvel Studios, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The film begins with jokes and ends with applause, bread and circuses in digital form. Yet beneath the laughter, I sensed fatigue. The citizens crave novelty, yet fear change. They worship their heroes, yet demand their death and resurrection every decade. How long, I wondered, before this empire too collapses beneath the weight of its own continuity? Perhaps that is why the people adore Deadpool. He mocks the very system that sustains him. He is rebellion within the machine. And Wolverine, the weary soldier. He represents what remains when that system burns. Together, they are prophecy. The clown who laughs as the Colosseum crumbles, and the warrior who watches it fall in silence. In my Rome, poets sang of Aeneas escaping the ruins of Troy to found a new world. Now, the poets of your age write screenplays, and their heroes too crawl from wreckage to rebuild again and again. It seems humanity cannot resist the myth of rebirth, even if it means watching the same story until the end of time. I will confess something unbecoming of an emperor. I was moved. For all its absurdity, the film stirred something in me. A memory of ambition, of empire, of men striving to be gods. Every civilization, no matter how advanced, tells the same story. The rise, the glory, the fall. And now, instead of marble, you build it with pixels. You call it the cinematic universe. I call it the modern pantheon. Each hero a deity of a different virtue. Iron Man, the god of invention. Captain America, the god of honor. Wolverine, the god of endurance. Deadpool, the god of irreverence. Even I, who commanded armies, could not compete with the devotion they inspire. Your citizens do not die for them, but they live for them. They tattoo their symbols, quote their decrees, and gather in temples called Comic-Con. It is religion refined through entertainment. And I must admit, it works. But as with Rome, I see the cracks forming. Each sequel grows louder, each story grander, each triumph emptier, until, one day, the crowd will no longer cheer. The gods will grow stale, and the empire will fall, not with invasion, but with indifference. I know this pattern well, for I, too, believed my empire eternal. And yet, as I sat there, surrounded by laughter and light, I realized something extraordinary. Perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the glory lies not in permanence, but in performance. Not in ruling forever, but in returning, again and again, to tell the story anew. Rome had its historians. You have your filmmakers. We both strive to make mortals immortal, through narrative. When I died, men wrote of my triumphs. When your heroes die, men tweet about them. Different ink, same instinct. I cannot help but respect it. For what is empire, if not the attempt to make meaning endure? And what is cinema if not the empire of emotion? As I left the theater, I passed a young boy holding a plastic sword, wearing a Wolverine mask. His mother asked him, "Did you like the movie?" He replied, I want to be strong like him, but funny like Deadpool. I smiled. There, in miniature, was the dream of Rome, reborn, strength and wit, courage and chaos. Not empire through conquest, empire through imagination, and perhaps that is the greatest conquest of all.